Well, let me be the first to thank you, President Marcos, for some phenomenal remarks and congratulate you on a phenomenal week of visits. I want to reiterate what Dr. Hamry said earlier about just how impressive the last few days of engagements has been. I'm Gregory Poland. I direct the Southeast Asia Program here at CSIS. I also run what we call the Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative focused on the South China Sea. So my interest in the Philippines has been long-standing on both fronts. And this is a real honor for us, especially after having so recently hosted Secretary of Foreign Affairs Manalo. Let me start with the alliance. So just yesterday, you visited the Pentagon. You were the first foreign leader to get full honors under the Biden administration at the Pentagon, and which I'm sure was no mistake. And then we saw the release of the new defense guidelines, the first ever bilateral defense guidelines, despite the fact that the Philippines is the oldest U.S. treaty ally in the region. It seems a pretty ambitious plan. When you look out 5 or 10 years, what does this more equal, more modern alliance look like to you?
Well, it is one that is responsive to the challenges that we face, and that approaches and finds ways to solve those problems, those challenges, on a multi-dimensional basis. The relationship between the Philippines and the United States, although security and defense right now are top of mind, and security and defense are what we feel are the urgent issues that we must attend to. When asked about what is the most important part of the relationship between U.S. and Philippines, is it the Mutual Defense Treaty? Is it the people-to-people relationship? And I cannot answer such a question because there are so many facets to our relationship. And what I see in the future is just developing all of those. Seeing as I mentioned, that we talk about security and defense. Security and defense can no longer be isolated as one issue. There are attendant and ancillary issues that help to solve the problem, and that are part of the solution. And so again, we must really be looking towards for example, on the economic side, we must be looking to adjust our relationship, as we all are trying to adjust and to transform our economies. We must look to the new economy that is emerging from the post-pandemic world, and with the impacting forces of the war in the Ukraine. And those are some things. These are elements. These are issues that we never really had to deal before. And I think that we are in very good agreement with your president and your government as to the directions that we need to take. And this visit has been most constructive in bringing us to that point where we can say we are ready, that we are capable of looking to the world and seeing what the world has become or what the world has evolved, and evolving as well together, so as to be able to play the part that we choose to play in the community of nations.
Are you happy with what the U.S. has put on the table to date on the economic front to make this really a comprehensive, not just a security-focused relationship?
Well, I think that, yes, I am. Now, it's simply because I think it is well recognized by both our governments, not only in the directions that we're taking, but the policies that we undertake. And for the part of the Philippines, even the new legislation that we have enacted, yes, we are attending to what can be considered to be the most critical areas. They may have, because of the situation in the geopolitical world right now, they may have begun or started with a focus on security and defense, but that was only a starting point. That this visit has become a very has certainly set the direction very clearly, and it is important in this volatile situation, this volatile setting, that clarity must be there, so as we are very clear in what we intend to do, what roles we play, and what positions we take on certain issues. And that, I think, we have largely achieved on this.
Could you elaborate a bit on what your administration's plans are to tackle that culture and the human rights abuses that it's allowed?
Well, I think those derive most of the discussion that are critical of the human rights situation of the Philippines derive from the policy that we undertook to fight the drug war. And perhaps and in my view, what had happened in the previous administration is that we focused very much on enforcement. And because of that, it could be said that there were abuses by certain elements in the government, and that has caused some concern with many, in many quarters, about the human rights situation in the Philippines. Well, I cannot speak to what my predecessor had in mind and what his idea was, but what I can speak to is the policy that we have undertaken. And that I said the drug war continues to be at the source of much criminality in the Philippines. The syndicates have grown stronger and wealthier and more influential, worryingly so. But instead of going after everyone, I tried to identify the key areas where we have that we have to tackle, the key areas that we have to attend to, so that we can see a diminution of the activity of the drug syndicates. To this end, we have just finished, we instituted a process by which we asked, it is very clear, I think anyone who looks at the drug problem in the Philippines, even very quickly, will immediately see that the problem lies in enforcement. And some of our law enforcement officers have been sucked in to these terrible systems that have enriched themselves at the cost of the lives of many, especially our young people. And the policemen, that is why we instituted, I organized a commission, and I asked for the resignation of all the police officers from colonel level up. And we have received about, 917 resignations. And we are now in the process of looking through the records of these officers to see those that have had derogatory comments, those that have evidence against them. As of today, 2 of those very high-ranking, I think general rank, have already been separated from the service. To be involved in any of these activities, then we will start to develop the cases against them, and in that way dismantle this terrible system that has grown up and has become such a cancer in our society that has gone all the way to the highest levels of government. So the change in policy, I believe, is much more focused. I always say that the previous administration had focused on enforcement. We have taken enforcement as far as we can. Now it is time to look at actually going after dismantling these syndicates.
We have to address the elephant in the room. China continues to harass Filipino mariners on a dangerous basis. Just last week, we had a near collision with the Philippine Coast Guard vessel under control, and China has been highly critical of your moves to deepen the alliance with the U.S. How can you maintain a stable relationship with Beijing while still defending Philippine sovereignty?
Well, in the same way that we maintain our relationship with the U.S., we constantly consult with our allies and our partners. We constantly keep our lines of communications open. When I went to see President Xi in Beijing last January, I proposed, so as to avoid these incidents, these unfortunate incidents that we see every so often, such as the blocking of our fishermen from their fishing grounds, such as the intimidation, really, of many of our maritime forces. I suggested that to avoid these instances, I suggested that we institute a system wherein we have a direct contact, one president to the other. And in that way, no matter if I cannot speak, for example, to President Xi himself, I have someone that I can pick up the phone and call who I know and I have confidence in making my message arrive to the president. And this works, of course, both ways. That if the president of the People's Republic would like a message to arrive to me, then that we have a system in place. We have a system in place to achieve that. And we are still working on it. Our Secretary of Foreign Affairs is working on the details of that. I refer to it as a hotline, really. And hopefully that soon we will have that in place. We will have that functioning. And in that way, this engagement is really not an option. Our foreign policy is almost simplistic when I describe it, because our foreign policy is based on the pursuit of peace. Our foreign policy is based on the promotion of our national interest. Now, the promotion of our national interest include the defense of our territorial integrity and of our sovereignty. And that is what that we are working on now. And I think that as long as we continue that process, as long as we continue to engage, as long as we continue to assure all our partners, not only China, but all our partners, the ASEAN member states, all the countries in Asia, all those we now include in the Indo-Pacific region, that we have an open and clear and available system to be able to communicate with one another. In my view, is the only way to keep the levels of confrontation, the levels of misunderstanding to a manageable level.
Thank you. Let's go to one of those that came in from our online audience. So first we have Leslie Wilhelm. She's a U.S. Navy civilian. She asked, what is the biggest immediate need for the Philippines to address the impending loss of the Malampaya field in 2027? This is an energy security question, I suppose.
Again, that's actually a terribly good question. Because the only way to resolve the issues that are outstanding is to once again keep talking and to come to a consensus, to come to an agreement, and to continue to negotiate. It is not an easy process, but the Malampaya fields are the natural gas fields that lie within our baselines and within our exclusive economic zone. And that, again, is being questioned in certain cases, in certain areas by China. And we continue to negotiate with them. We continue to find a way. The essential problem, the essential roadblock to that whole process has been very simple. China claims certain areas of the sea, the 9-dash line, and covers just about the entire West Philippine Sea. We, on the other hand, have established our baselines, which have been recognized and accredited by UNCLOS. And therefore, there is that conflict. And so what happens now, especially when it comes to exploration for energy, for our energy needs, are which law will apply. Because we say this is part of Philippine territory, and therefore Philippine law should apply. Chinese say, no, it is part of our territory. Therefore, Chinese local laws should apply. We are slowly inching towards a resolution of that. And it may have to come down to a compromise that will just limit that application, the application of laws, maybe to the vessels that are involved in this exploration and exploitation of whatever natural gas fields we can access. So that's one of the suggestions. That's why we must be constant, we must be transparent, and we must be accountable for all that we do. And I cannot see any other way to handle the problem other than that.
I won't ask China Sea question, although I had a lot of those, because you've done such a good job of answering them. But I'll ask an economic question. Your predecessor had roughly cut off a lot of the mining opportunities in the Philippines. But you talked in your opening remarks about the minerals that you have and that could be developed probably for electric vehicles and other purposes, clean energy purposes. Can you talk a little bit about what you're planning to do in that sector and how you're attracting foreign investment in the clean energy space?
With regard to what as you describe it as the cutting off of mining opportunities in the Philippines, that was a very very much in the initial part of the previous administration. Since then, the position of the Philippines has changed. What we are working for now is not, right now we are exporting nickel, but we are exporting, that's an example, nickel. We are exporting nickel as raw ore. And that is probably the worst way to do business in terms of value added in our country. And so what we are working towards now is the processing and leaving the value added in the Philippines. And again, to go back to my previous example for nickel, we can process that into a finished product that we can now use. That's why battery technology and battery manufacture has become so attractive for us. And that's why I mentioned it more than once in my remarks, simply because we have available to us all the minerals that are necessary for the production of batteries. So that for me may be the ultimate end of what we are trying to do. But to do that, we have to be able to extract our copper, to extract our cobalt, to extract our nickel, and process it into a form that is useful as the raw material for further processing into batteries. So we are not yet at that point. If we were to initiate the businesses that we have been looking at in terms of battery production and all the other technologies that will help our renewable and fossil fuel mix. If we are going to be able to participate in that market, we have to be able to process our raw material into a form that is applicable as a raw material for the succeeding processes that will bring us to the point where we are actually manufacturing batteries. I think it's well recognized around the world that this is where we are headed.
Asked the question that we got a lot of different versions of the same question. Has the U.S. asked your government to contribute Philippine military troops to combat operations should a war break out between the U.S. and China over Taiwan?
No.
I suspect it's a very short or a very long answer.
Well, the short answer is no. And the reason is that we have made it very clear that the bases that we have opened up to be used by American forces in the Philippines, we had just identified 4 additional bases which we announced last month, and the original concept behind this cooperation agreement that we have with the U.S. that from which these new bases were derived from. It was really because of the effects of climate change and the increasing instances of disasters in the Philippines. I think, for example, everyone can remember the super typhoon. You call it Haiyan, we called it Yolanda, and that was 9 years ago, 10 years ago now. And that was, for example, that everyone said that is a 100-year typhoon, and meaning this strong a typhoon only occurs every 100 years or so. Well, 8 years later, we had Typhoon Odette that was not quite as strong, but laid waste to as much of our resources as Yolanda did. At the very least, after all of these things that have happened, the naysayers that say that climate change is not real, etc., global warming is not a big deal, etc., etc., at least we have heard less and less of that. But that recognition that this is the situation that we are facing. The Philippines, in terms of climate change, has been determined and assessed to be one of the most, if not the most, vulnerable countries when it comes to the effects of climate change. The EDCA sites were meant to be, conceptualized really to be the places that we could use so as to be able to provide quicker relief, quicker rescue, do a better job, in other words, of rehabilitating and reconstructing the damage that will be caused by these disasters. Should there be such an attempt to use the EDCA sites for offensive action, then that would be outside the parameters of what we had discussed and what the EDCA sites are in fact for. So, but to be fair, the United States has never brought up the possibility that the United States will use the EDCA sites as staging areas for any offensive action against any country. And I think we are in lockstep with the U.S. with that, and that they understand the concerns that the Philippines has, and are sensitive to the reasons why we have those concerns. So, again, to go back to the quick answer, no, the United States has never said that this is a possibility, and we have also made it clear from our end that we will. This is not the purpose of those sites, and this is not the way they will be used. Can we take one more? And then the poor lady has been waiting to.
Okay. This is like in the concert when they come out for the encore. We have one more.
It's like an encore question. Welcome to Washington, President Marcos. My name is Nike Chin from Voice of America. Good afternoon. You mentioned war on Ukraine. If you don't mind me asking, what is your takeaway in your meetings with U.S. officials and Congress? And how do you assess the possibility of U.S. and China work together to mediate an end to the Ukraine war? And if you don't mind me being very direct, would Southeast Asian countries like the Philippines welcome it or being skeptical about it? Thank you.
Well, the Philippines has been very clear in our support for the resolutions in the United Nations that were passed upon the onset of the war in Ukraine, in that we respect the sovereignty and territoriality of every single nation in the world. And that applies most certainly because they are in this incredibly critical situation where there is an outright war going on. But nonetheless, we all think that way. And you say when the first reports started coming in about the massing of forces by Russia on the Crimean border, the border with the Ukraine, we all sort of shrugged and said that this is not going to happen. It's 2022. You know, this is not the sort of thing that goes on anymore. Boy, were we wrong. We know now exactly what has occurred, and so we must continue to present a united front because the war in Ukraine has affected everyone, strangely enough, because it's not something that we expected. We never expected that the war in Ukraine would make any difference to the lives of ordinary Filipinos. Well, it has, in a very serious and profound way. And that's why it is essential that we are all, and I speak in terms of ASEAN, I speak in terms of Asia, that we are all shoulder to shoulder and continuing to promote the rights of every sovereign nation to protect its borders. And I think that is the principle that we must hold close and fight very hard to defend. That is the position that the Philippines has. I believe it is the position that ASEAN has, and I believe it is the position that most Asian countries have.
Thank you. And with that, please join me in a round of applause.
Thank you.